The alarm in the training hall screams before I even open my eyes, and I already know today is the day everyone has been waiting for. Not because they want to see me succeed, they want to see me fall. My name is Ethan Cole, and I am the smallest human ever accepted into the Galactic Defense Academy. I stand barely average height even by Earth standards, and next to the towering cadets from other worlds, I look like a child who wandered into a room full of giants. My arms are thin, my shoulders are narrow. When I walk through the corridors, I hear the whispers before I even pass by. There he is, the frail one, the mistake Earth sent to embarrass itself. I have heard it so many times that the words no longer sting the way they used to. They just sit there, quiet and cold, like a stone I carry in my chest, every single day. The Academy sits on a station orbiting a distant star, built by an alliance of species who long ago decided to stop fighting each other and start training together instead. 6 great civilizations send their brightest young warriors here. 5 of those civilizations have cadets who could crush stone with their bare hands. The 6th is Earth, and Earth sent me. I remember the day I arrived. The shuttle doors opened, and the first thing I saw was a Threllan cadet standing nearly 9 feet tall, its shoulders wider than a doorway, its skin plated like armor. Its name was Frailest Cadet, and even then, before he said a single word to me, he looked at me the way someone looks at an insect they are deciding whether to step on. That was 3 months ago. Since then, Vrax has become the undefeated champion of every combat trial in the Academy. Nobody has lasted more than a few seconds against him. Nobody human, alien, or otherwise. Today, I walk into the training hall, and the murmurs start immediately. Cadets from 4 different species turn to look at me, some with curiosity, most with the same tired amusement they always show. I keep my head level and my pace steady. I learned a long time ago that showing weakness on the outside only invites more of it from others. Instructor Voss, a broad-shouldered Kalari with silver markings across his face, stands at the center of the hall reading names from a datapad. When he reaches mine, he does not even look up. Cole. Sparring assignment, Station 4. I nod and walk toward Station 4, where a smaller Vantic cadet named Priya Okafor waits for me. She is one of the few people here who does not look at me like I am a joke. She gives me a small nod as I approach. "Ready?" she asks. "Always," I say, though the truth is more complicated than that. We begin our sparring match, and for a few minutes, the world narrows down to footwork, breathing, and timing. Priya is fast, and she uses her speed well, but I have learned to read movement before it happens, to notice the shift of weight in someone's hips a half second before they commit to a strike. It is not strength, it is awareness. It is the only weapon I have ever needed. I sweep her leg and catch her before she falls, guiding her down gently instead of letting her hit the mat hard. She laughs and taps my arm. "One day you're going to have to explain how you do that," she says. "Maybe one day," I answer, though I am not ready to explain anything to anyone. Across the hall, laughter erupts, loud and mocking. I do not need to turn around to know who it is. Frailest Cadet stands near the far wall, surrounded by a small crowd of cadets, from his own species, and a few others eager to be near someone powerful. He is looking directly at me. "Look at the little one," he says, his voice carrying easily across the open space. Does Earth send its children to fight, or does it simply not know the difference between a cadet and a mistake? The crowd laughs again. Some cadets look away, uncomfortable. Others join in without hesitation. I feel the familiar tightness in my chest, but I keep my face calm. I learned that lesson before I ever set foot on this station. Reacting only gives them more to laugh at. Instructor Voss calls for order, and the room settles, though the tension does not disappear. It never does. It just waits, quiet, beneath the surface, the way it always does before something breaks. After training, I walk the long corridor back toward the cadet quarters, my mind replaying the morning the way it always does. I think about my first week here, when a Threllan instructor pulled me aside and asked, quite seriously, whether I understood the physical requirements of the program. I told him I did. He looked unconvinced, but he let me stay, mostly because Earth's diplomatic status required it. I think about the letters my mother sends, filled with hope and pride, completely unaware of what daily life here actually looks like. I have never told her about the whispers or the laughter. I do not want her to worry, and more than that, I do not want her to see me as something fragile that needs protecting. I am not fragile. I have simply learned to hide what I carry. That evening, the entire academy gathers in the central hall for the weekly announcement broadcast. Commander Alice Winters, the human officer in charge of Earth's cadet program, stands at the podium alongside representatives from each species. She is a tall woman with steady eyes and a voice that carries authority without ever needing to be loud. "Good evening, cadets," she begins. "Tonight we recognize achievement, and we look ahead to challenges still to come." She lists names, achievements, small victories from the week. When she reaches the combat rankings, the room grows quiet with anticipation. Vrax Cordain's name appears at the very top, as it always does, undefeated across 17 consecutive trials. The crowd applauds, some out of respect, some simply because that is expected. Vrax stands, tall and proud, accepting the recognition with a slow, deliberate bow that somehow manages to look more like mockery than humility. Then he does something unexpected. He turns, scanning the room until his eyes land on me. "I have a request," he says, addressing Commander Winters directly. "I wish to issue a formal challenge." The room goes silent. Commander Winters raises an eyebrow. "Against whom?" Vrax smiles, and it is not a kind expression. "Against the frail one. Against Ethan Cole." Whispers ripple through the hall immediately. Some cadets laugh outright, already imagining the outcome. Others glance at me with something closer to pity. I feel every eye in the room settle on me at once, and for a moment, the old tightness in my chest threatens to rise again. Commander Winters studies me carefully, and I wonder if she is going to refuse on my behalf, the way so many others have tried to protect me before. Instead, she simply asks, "Cadet Cole, do you accept this challenge?" I think about my mother's letters. I think about the years of training no one here knows about, the quiet mornings and long nights that shaped me long before I ever stepped onto this station. I think about every whisper, every laugh, every assumption made about what a small frame must mean about the strength inside it. I stand, and I let my voice carry clearly across the silent hall. I accept. The room erupts into noise, some cheering for Vrax, some murmuring in disbelief, a few, very few, looking at me with something that might almost be hope. Vrax laughs, loud and confident, already certain of how this will end. "This will be quick," he says. I meet his eyes, and for the first time since I arrived on this station, I do not look away. "We will see," I say quietly. The broadcast ends, and the hall slowly empties, cadets breaking into small groups, already placing bets, already deciding how the story will be told tomorrow. I remain standing a moment longer, feeling the weight of what I have just agreed to. 3 days from now, in the main arena, in front of the entire academy, I will step onto the mat against the undefeated champion of 6 civilizations. Everyone expects a slaughter. Everyone expects the frail cadet from Earth to finally prove what they already believe. What they do not know is where I came from, or what shaped me long before this station ever existed in my life. What they do not know is that being underestimated is not a weakness. It is the oldest weapon my people have ever carried. I walk back to my quarters alone, and for the first time in months, I do not feel small at all. The night before a fight always feels longer than it should, and I spend most of it sitting by the small window of my quarters, watching the slow turn of stars outside the station. My mind drifts back to a place far from here, a place none of these cadets have ever heard of, and none of them would understand even if I explained it. I grew up on a research outpost near the edge of Earth's territory, a place my father called the Ridge, where the air pressure never quite settled right, and every season brought storms strong enough to tear metal from its bolts. My father was an engineer. My mother was a doctor. Neither of them were fighters, not in the way people usually mean, but survival on the Ridge required a different kind of strength. When I was young, before I understood why, my father enrolled me in a program run by a retired officer named Daniel Marsh, a quiet, patient man who had served 2 decades in Earth's early defense forces before settling on the Ridge to teach. He never called what he taught fighting. He called it awareness. Strength fades, he told me once, kneeling beside me after I had fallen for the 10th time that day. Awareness does not. If you can see what is coming before it arrives, you will never be truly weak. I trained with Daniel Marsh for 9 years, not the way people imagine training, with weights and shouting and broken bones. He taught me to read movement, to understand balance, to recognize the half-second of hesitation that comes before every action. He taught me that the body is a system of levers and timing, and that strength, real strength, often has very little to do with size. By the time I was 15, I could disarm cadets twice my size in local defense drills, not because I was stronger, but because I understood exactly where their strength would fail them. Daniel Marsh used to say that the biggest fighters often carry the biggest blind spots because they have never needed to develop anything else. He also taught me something else, something I carry with me every day I spend on this station. Let them underestimate you, he said. That is not an insult, that is a gift. The moment someone stops taking you seriously is the moment they stop preparing for you. I think about those words now, sitting in the quiet of my quarters, 3 days before I face Frailest Cadet in front of the entire academy. The next morning, I wake before the alarm and head to the training hall early, long before most cadets are even awake. I want the mat to myself, at least for a little while. I need to move through the old patterns Daniel Marsh taught me, the ones I have not needed in months, because nobody here has ever pushed me hard enough to require them. I begin slowly, working through footwork drills, careful and deliberate. My body remembers even when my mind has been distracted by the noise of daily life at the academy. I move through defensive patterns, then transitions, then the specific techniques Daniel Marsh developed for fighting opponents far larger than myself. A voice interrupts my focus. Commander Winters stands near the entrance, arms crossed, watching me with an expression I cannot quite read. "You've been holding back," she says. Not as a question. I pause, catching my breath. I did not think anyone was watching. I wasn't, until about 10 minutes ago, she says, walking closer. I came in early to review the training schedule. I did not expect to find this. I do not know how to respond, so I say nothing. She studies me for a long moment. 3 months you've been here, Cole. 3 months of cadets mocking you, instructors questioning your placement, and not once have I seen you move like that in an official session. I did not think it would matter, I say honestly. Everyone already decided what they think of me before I ever stepped onto this station. Commander Winters is quiet for a moment. And Frailest Cadet, does he know what he is challenging? I shake my head. No, nobody does. She almost smiles, though she catches herself before it fully forms. Then let's make sure it stays that way until the day of the trial. She turns to leave, then pauses at the door. Whatever you learned before you got here, Cole, whoever taught you, I hope they know what they built. After she leaves, I return to my training, but her words stay with me. I think about Daniel Marsh, now long retired, living a quiet life back on the ridge, likely unaware that the lessons he spent 9 years teaching a small, unremarkable boy are about to be tested in front of an audience of 6 civilizations. Over the following 2 days, I train harder than I have since I arrived at the academy, careful never to reveal my full ability in front of other cadets. I spar with Priya during scheduled sessions, keeping my movements simple, unremarkable, exactly what everyone expects from me. But in the early mornings, alone in the hall, I let myself move the way Daniel Marsh trained me to move, sharp, efficient, calculated. I study Frailest Cadet as well, watching recordings of his previous matches during free hours in the Academy archive room. His strength is undeniable, his speed surprising for someone his size, but his patterns are exactly what Daniel Marsh warned me about all those years ago. He relies entirely on overwhelming force. He has never needed technique, because nobody has ever survived long enough to force him to develop it. Every match follows the same pattern. He waits for his opponent to commit to an attack, absorbs the strike with his size, and overwhelms them before they can recover. It has worked 17 times in a row because nobody has ever tested the actual structure of his approach. I notice something else, something small but important. In every recorded match, in the instant before Vrax launches his final overwhelming strike, his weight shifts slightly onto his back leg, just for a fraction of a second, just enough to generate the force he needs. It is barely noticeable. Most opponents never see it because they are too focused on his size to watch his feet. Daniel Marsh spent years teaching me to watch feet before anything else. Feet do not lie, he used to say. A face can bluff. A voice can bluff. Feet only move where the body intends to go. By the night before the trial, I feel something settle inside me that has not been there since I arrived at the academy. Not confidence exactly, but clarity. I know what Vrax Cordain will do before he does it. I know the shape of the fight before it begins. I write a short letter to my mother that night, careful not to mention the trial directly, not wanting her to worry before she needs to. I simply tell her that I am doing well, that I am learning, that everything Daniel Marsh taught me feels more important now than it ever has before. Then I sit by the window one last time, watching the same slow turn of stars, and I let myself remember every quiet morning on the ridge, every fall, every lesson, every small victory that shaped the person standing here now. Tomorrow, the entire academy will gather expecting to watch a slaughter. They have no idea what is actually coming. The morning of the trial arrives with a strange stillness across the station, as if even the air itself understands something significant is about to happen. I wake early, the way I always do before something important, and spend a few quiet minutes simply breathing, letting my mind settle into the calm focus Daniel Marsh spent years building inside me. By mid-morning, the arena is already filling with cadets from every species at the academy. Word of the challenge spread quickly across the station over the past 3 days, and what began as a simple sparring match has become something far larger. Officers from each civilization's home government have reportedly tuned in through the Academy's broadcast feed, curious to witness what most assume will be a short, unremarkable display. I walk toward the arena entrance with Priya beside me, her expression tighter than usual. "You don't have to do this," she says quietly. "Nobody would blame you for withdrawing." "I appreciate that," I say, and I mean it, but I'm not withdrawing. She studies my face for a long moment. Then something shifts in her expression, as though she notices something she had not seen in me before. "You're not scared," she says slowly, "not even a little." I think about Daniel Marsh, about the ridge, about 9 years of quiet mornings that shaped me long before this station existed in my life. "I stopped being scared of this a long time ago," I tell her. The arena itself is a massive circular chamber, its floor lined with a specialized mat designed to absorb impact from even the largest species at the academy. Tiered seating rises on all sides, already packed with cadets, instructors, and observers. Commander Winters stands near the front row alongside representatives from the other 5 civilizations, her expression calm but watchful. I step onto the mat, and the noise of the crowd shifts immediately, laughter and murmurs rippling through the tiers. I hear the same tired comments I have heard for months. Comments about my size, my frame, my apparent mistake in ever accepting a place here. I let the sound wash over me without reacting, exactly the way Daniel Marsh taught me. A moment later, Vrax Cordain enters from the opposite side, and the crowd's energy shifts entirely, cheering erupting from his supporters, confident and loud. He walks with the same slow, deliberate arrogance I have grown used to seeing, clearly enjoying the attention, clearly certain of how today will end. He stops across the mat from me, towering nearly 3 feet taller, his plated skin catching the arena lights. "Last chance to withdraw, little one," he says, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Nobody would think less of you." I meet his eyes and keep my voice steady. "I'm not withdrawing." He laughs, and the crowd laughs with him. Commander Winters steps forward to address the arena, explaining the rules of the trial. Standard combat regulations designed to ensure safety while still testing genuine skill. Strikes must remain controlled. The match ends the moment one combatant yields or is rendered unable to continue. No permanent harm is permitted under any circumstance, and Academy medical staff stand ready at the edge of the mat as a precaution, though nobody expects them to be needed for more than a moment. I take my position at the center of the mat, and Vrax does the same, still smiling with the easy confidence of someone who has never once needed to consider losing. "Combatants ready," Commander Winters calls. I steady my breathing, letting my mind settle into the calm clarity Daniel Marsh spent 9 years building inside me. I watch Vrax's stance, his weight distribution, the subtle shift I have studied in every recording of his previous matches. Begin. Vrax moves first, exactly as I expected. He does not rush immediately, instead circling slightly, allowing the crowd another moment to appreciate his size before he commits to anything. I remain still, watching his feet rather than his face, waiting for the shift Daniel Marsh trained me to recognize. "Aren't you going to run?" Vrax asks, his tone almost playful now, enjoying what he assumes is my hesitation. "I don't need to," I say quietly. Something flickers across his expression. Confusion, perhaps, though it disappears quickly beneath his confidence. He steps forward, closing the distance between us, clearly deciding to end the match immediately rather than prolong what he still believes will be an easy victory. And there it is, the subtle shift of weight onto his back leg, exactly as I studied in every recording, exactly as Daniel Marsh taught me to watch for years ago on the ridge. I move. Everything happens in a fraction of the time it takes the crowd to process what they are seeing. Instead of retreating, instead of doing anything Vrax expects from someone his size assumes should be afraid, I step directly into his approaching strike, closing the distance before his overwhelming force ever has room to build. I redirect his forward momentum using nothing more than precise angles and timing, technique built on 9 years of understanding exactly how larger bodies move and exactly where their balance becomes vulnerable the instant they commit fully to an attack. His own strength becomes the very thing that carries him past his intended target, his massive frame suddenly working entirely against him. I catch his extended arm, using the leverage Daniel Marsh spent years teaching me, turning his own considerable weight against the structure of his shoulder and hip. It requires no strength on my part at all. It requires only precision, only timing, only understanding exactly where a much larger body becomes helpless against its own momentum. Vrax's massive frame pivots entirely out of his control, and in the span of perhaps 2 full seconds, he finds himself completely off balance, his considerable size suddenly working against him rather than for him. I complete the motion, guiding him down to the mat with controlled precision, securing the position Daniel Marsh drilled into me across hundreds of quiet mornings on the ridge. The moment stretches, and then Commander Winters' voice cuts through the stunned silence of the arena. "Yield or continue?" Vrax says nothing for a long moment, clearly processing what has just happened, his considerable strength completely unable to answer a technique it was never designed to counter. "Yield," he finally says, his voice quiet, stripped of every ounce of confidence it carried only seconds before. "Match complete," Commander Winters announces. The arena remains utterly silent for several long seconds. Thousands of cadets from 6 civilizations processing what they just witnessed. The entire match, from beginning to end, lasted less than 4 seconds. I release my hold and step back, allowing Vrax to rise on his own. He does so slowly, staring at me with an expression I have never seen from him before, something between confusion and something closer to genuine respect. "How?" he asks quietly, so only I can hear. I think about Daniel Marsh, about the ridge, about 9 years of quiet mornings nobody at this academy ever knew existed. Strength fades, I tell him. Awareness does not. The silence in the arena finally breaks, not into laughter this time, but into something closer to stunned murmuring, thousands of voices trying to process what they just witnessed. I stand at the center of the mat, breathing steady, while Vrax slowly rises to his feet beside me, his expression unreadable. Commander Winters steps forward, addressing the arena with practiced calm, though even her voice carries a note of something new. Match recorded. Cadet Cole declared victor by yield. The words echo strangely across the silent chamber. I glance up toward the tiered seating and see rows of faces staring down at me, expressions ranging from disbelief to something almost like fear, as though the entire foundation of what they believed about size and strength has shifted in less than 4 seconds. Priya reaches me first, pushing through the crowd gathering near the edge of the mat, her eyes wide with something between shock and pure delight. 4 seconds, she says, almost breathless. Ethan, that was 4 seconds. I allow myself a small smile, though the moment still feels strange, unreal, like something happening to someone else. I did not expect it to happen quite that quickly either, I admit. Around us, the arena slowly comes back to life, voices rising in overlapping waves of disbelief, argument, and reluctant admiration. Some cadets from Vrax's own species stand rigid, arms crossed, clearly refusing to accept what they just witnessed. Others look genuinely stunned, murmuring quietly among themselves, glancing toward me with expressions I have never seen directed at myself before. Commander Winters approaches, her expression calm but her eyes carrying something warmer than the professional composure she usually maintains. "That technique," she says quietly, only for me to hear. "Where did you learn that?" "Someone who understood that strength is not the only thing worth building," I answer. She studies me a moment longer, then nods slowly, as though confirming something she suspected days ago when she found me training alone before dawn. "Well," she says, "whoever they are, they should be proud." Across the mat, Vrax stands surrounded by a small cluster of his own supporters, their voices low and urgent. I catch fragments of the conversation, accusations of trickery, demands for review of the match recording, disbelief carried in every raised voice. Vrax himself says nothing, staring instead at his own hands, as though trying to understand exactly what happened to a body that has never once failed him in 17 previous matches. The Academy medical staff move to check on him, though he waves them away with a tired gesture, clearly unharmed physically, though something else entirely seems shaken. Word of the match spreads across the station within the hour, and by evening it becomes clear that the story has already traveled far beyond the Academy itself. During the communal meal that night, cadets from every species approach my table, some out of curiosity, some out of genuine respect, a few still clearly skeptical, convinced there must be some explanation beyond simple skill. A tall Kalari cadet named Henry Dawson, who trained under instructor Voss alongside me during early combat sessions, sits across from me with an expression of open curiosity. "Everyone's saying it was luck," he says bluntly. "Personally, I don't believe that for a second. I've seen you move in sparring sessions. You've been holding back the entire time, haven't you?" I consider my answer carefully. I did not think anyone needed to see everything I could do, I admit. Being underestimated has always worked in my favor. Henry studies me for a long moment, then laughs quietly, shaking his head. "Earth's frail cadet," he says, almost amused. "I don't think anyone's going to call you that again." Later that evening, as the communal hall slowly empties, Commander Winters finds me near the observation window, overlooking the station's central docking bay. She stands beside me quietly for a moment before speaking. "The Academy Council wants a full review of today's match," she says. "Some are calling for a formal investigation into whether the outcome was legitimate. I am not surprised, though something tightens in my chest regardless." "And what do you think?" She turns to look at me directly. I think I watched a cadet everyone dismissed for 3 months demonstrate exactly why underestimating someone is the most dangerous mistake anyone can make. I do not need an investigation to confirm what I saw with my own eyes. Her words settle something inside me that has been unsettled since I first arrived at this station. "Thank you," I say quietly. She nods, then adds something else, her tone shifting slightly. "There are larger implications here, Cole, beyond just today's match. Word has already reached representatives from all 6 civilizations. Some are curious, some are concerned. A few, I suspect, are already looking for ways to use what happened today for their own political purposes. I had not considered that possibility, though it makes sense the moment she says it. What does that mean for me? It means, she says carefully, that what happens next may matter far more than a single sparring match ever could. Over the following days, the ripple effects of the match become impossible to ignore. Cadets who once mocked me openly now watch carefully from a distance, unsure how to reconcile the small human they dismissed with the technique they witnessed in the arena. Instructors who once questioned my placement in the program now review my file with renewed interest, some requesting private meetings to discuss my training background. Vrax himself approaches me 3 days after the match, finding me alone in the training hall during an early morning session. I straighten as he enters, uncertain what to expect, though his posture carries none of the arrogance I grew used to seeing over the past 3 months. "I want to understand," he says simply. "Not to challenge you again, to understand." I lower my guard slightly, recognizing something genuine in his tone. "What do you want to know?" "You said strength fades," he says. "Where I come from, size and power have always been the measure of worth. Everything is built around that belief. I have never needed anything else, because nothing has ever tested me the way you did." I think carefully before answering. "Where I come from, size was never something we could rely on. We had to build something else instead, something that does not depend on how large or strong a body happens to be." Vrax considers this for a long moment. The arrogance that once defined every interaction between us now replaced with something closer to genuine curiosity. "Would you teach me?" he asks finally. "Not to challenge you again, but because I think there is something valuable in what you understand that my own training never considered." The question catches me off guard, though the more I consider it, the more it feels like an opportunity, rather than a burden. I think about Daniel Marsh, about the Ridge, about 9 years of lessons that shaped me into someone capable of standing here at all. I think Daniel Marsh would want that knowledge to grow beyond just myself, I say slowly. "I'll teach you, if you're willing to actually listen." Vrax nods slowly, something shifting in his expression that looks almost like respect. I am listening now. Over the following weeks, word of our unlikely arrangement spreads across the academy almost as quickly as the story of the original match itself. Other cadets, curious and increasingly humble, begin requesting similar sessions, eager to understand the techniques that toppled an undefeated champion in less than 4 seconds. Commander Winters watches this development with quiet approval, though she warns me during one of our private discussions that not everyone across the 6 civilizations views these developments favorably. "There are those who see value in what you're building here," she says, "and there are those who see a threat to established hierarchies that have existed for generations. Both reactions matter, Cole. Be prepared for what comes next." I do not fully understand what she means until several weeks later, when new reports begin circulating through the Academy's command channels, reports of unusual activity along the outer boundaries of the Alliance's shared territory, an emerging threat that none of the 6 civilizations have yet fully identified. Commander Winters calls a private meeting with select cadets, myself included, explaining that the Academy Council believes a larger trial may soon be necessary, one that will test not just individual skill, but the readiness of the entire Alliance to face something none of them have encountered before. "Whatever happens next," she says, addressing the small group gathered in the briefing room, "will require more than strength alone to survive. It will require everything this Academy has spent years trying to build, and it will require every cadet in this room to work together in ways they have never had to consider before." I glance around the room, seeing familiar faces, Priya, Henry, even Vrax, standing quietly near the back, each of them absorbing the weight of what Commander Winters describes. I think about Daniel Marsh's words, about awareness lasting longer than strength ever could, and I wonder if the lessons that carried me through a single match in the arena are about to be tested on a scale none of us have yet imagined. Whatever comes next, I know one thing with absolute certainty. I am no longer the frail cadet everyone once dismissed without a second thought. I am something else now. Something built through years of quiet mornings, on a distant outpost most people here will never understand. And whatever threat waits beyond the boundaries of known space, I intend to meet it the same way I met Vrax Cordain in the arena. Not with size, not with strength. With everything Daniel Marsh spent 9 years teaching me to become. 3 weeks after the briefing, the Academy Council confirms what Commander Winters had quietly prepared us for. An unidentified force has been detected along the outer edge of Alliance territory, moving with a coordination and technology unlike anything the 6 civilizations have previously encountered. Diplomatic channels have failed to identify its origin. Scout vessels sent to observe have returned with incomplete data and, in 2 cases, have not returned at all. The Academy Council decides that a joint training exercise, larger and more demanding than anything conducted before, will determine which cadets are ready to be assigned to the Alliance's forward response teams. It is, in every sense that matters, no longer a simple trial. It is preparation for something real. Commander Winters gathers the same group from the earlier briefing, along with additional cadets selected from across all 6 civilizations, inside the Academy's largest simulation chamber. The room itself can recreate almost any environment imaginable, and today it has been configured to resemble the rocky, unstable terrain of a border outpost, complete with unpredictable weather patterns and simulated structural hazards. This exercise will not be measured by individual victory, Commander Winters explains, addressing the assembled cadets. It will be measured by how well you function as a unit, how well you protect each other, and how well you adapt when the situation refuses to follow expectations. I stand near the front of the group, Priya on one side, Henry on the other, Vrax standing quietly just behind us. In the weeks since our private training sessions began, Vrax has changed considerably, his old arrogance replaced by careful, deliberate focus. He has become, somewhat unexpectedly, one of the most attentive students I have ever taught. The simulation begins without warning, the chamber shifting instantly into a chaotic, storm-battered landscape, jagged rock formations rising on all sides, artificial wind howling through narrow passages designed to disorient anyone unprepared for sudden environmental changes. Our objective appears on personal data displays worn on each cadet's wrist, a simulated distress signal originating from a damaged outpost roughly 2 kilometers ahead, requiring our team to navigate hazardous terrain, avoid simulated hostile encounters, and reach survivors before a countdown timer reaches 0. Teams, move out, Commander Winters' voice announces through the chamber's speaker system. I glance toward Priya, who nods immediately, already shifting into the focused readiness I have come to recognize in her during real challenges. Henry checks his equipment with practiced efficiency, while Vrax simply waits, watching me for direction the way he has during every training session over the past several weeks. Stay low through the passages, I say, raising my voice slightly over the artificial wind. Watch your footing on the loose rock. Priya, take point since you're fastest. Henry, watch our rear. Vrax, you're with me in the middle. Nobody questions the arrangement, which surprises me slightly, given how differently this same group of cadets once viewed me. We move forward together, navigating the narrow, rocky passage with careful, coordinated movement, each of us watching for hazards the others might miss. The first obstacle appears within minutes, a section of unstable ground that begins to shift beneath Henry's weight as he crosses. I catch his arm instantly, pulling him back before the simulated ground gives way entirely, revealing a steep drop beneath. Thanks, he says, breathing hard. Watch the color of the rock, I tell him. Darker sections absorb less structural stability in this simulation. Daniel Marsh taught me that pattern recognition applies to more than just combat. We continue forward, the storm intensifying around us, visibility dropping steadily as we approach the halfway point toward our objective. A sudden alert flashes across our wrist displays. Simulated hostile signatures detected approaching from the eastern ridgeline. Formation, I call immediately, and the team responds without hesitation, falling into the defensive pattern we practiced during earlier sessions this week. Priya and Henry take the flanking positions, while Vrax and I hold the center, watching the ridgeline carefully as 3 simulated figures emerge from the storm. They move with mechanical precision, clearly programmed to test coordinated response rather than individual skill. I signal quietly to Priya, indicating the leftmost figure, then to Henry for the rightmost, leaving the center figure for myself and Vrax. The exercise unfolds with controlled efficiency, each team member executing exactly the role we discussed during preparation. Priya moves with practice speed, disabling her target within seconds. Henry follows a moment later, his approach more methodical but equally effective. Vrax and I handle the center figure together, his considerable strength combined now with the timing and technique he has spent weeks learning, resulting in a clean, coordinated resolution rather than the brute overwhelming force he once relied upon exclusively. Simulation checkpoint reached. The chamber's automated system announces, proceeding to final objective. We press forward, and within minutes, the simulated outpost comes into view, damaged and battered by the artificial storm, distress beacon flashing weakly near its entrance. We reach the structure with seconds remaining on the countdown timer, successfully completing the exercise as a coordinated unit rather than a collection of individual competitors. The simulation fades, the chamber returning to its neutral configuration, and Commander Winters' voice carries genuine approval as she addresses the group. Well done. That is precisely the kind of coordination this alliance will need in the coming months. As the group disperses, Vrax approaches me quietly, his expression thoughtful. 3 months ago, he says, I would have insisted on handling that final encounter alone. I would have seen your involvement as unnecessary. And now? I ask. Now, he says slowly, I understand that strength without awareness is simply strength wasted. You taught me that, and today proved it. I feel something settle inside me, a quiet satisfaction that has nothing to do with victory in a single match, and everything to do with genuine change built through patient effort over time. That evening, Commander Winters calls me aside privately, her expression carrying something more serious than the calm approval she showed after the simulation exercise. The Council has reviewed today's results carefully, she says. Your team performed exceptionally well, and your leadership throughout the exercise did not go unnoticed. I did not do anything alone, I say honestly. Everyone contributed. That, she says, smiling slightly, is precisely why they noticed you. Leadership was never about doing everything alone, Cole. It was always about ensuring everyone around you succeeds together. She pauses, her expression growing more serious. There is something else you should know. The Council is forming a forward response team, cadets selected specifically to investigate the unidentified activity along the Alliance's border. Given today's results, your name has been proposed for inclusion. The weight of her words settles slowly, the reality of everything building over the past several weeks suddenly becoming very real. This is no longer a training exercise or a simulation designed to test coordination. This is the actual threat Commander Winters warned us about weeks ago, now close enough to require real cadets to face it directly. What would that mean? I ask carefully. It would mean, she says, that everything you have learned, everything Daniel Marsh spent years teaching you, may soon be tested in circumstances far more serious than any arena match or training simulation. I think about my mother's letters, filled with hope and pride, unaware of everything happening here. I think about Daniel Marsh, likely still living quietly on the ridge, unaware that the lessons he spent 9 years building inside a small, unremarkable boy may soon matter more than either of us ever imagined. I think about Vrax, about Priya, about Henry, about everyone who once doubted me and has since come to understand something different about strength and awareness working together rather than strength alone. Whatever waits beyond the boundaries of known space, whatever threat has drawn the attention of 6 entire civilizations, I know one thing with complete certainty as I stand here considering Commander Winters' words. I am ready to find out. The Council's decision arrives formally 3 days later, delivered through an official notice displayed on every cadet's personal data terminal across the Academy. My name appears among a small list selected for the Alliance's forward response team, alongside Priya, Henry, and, somewhat remarkably, Vrax Cordain himself. The morning we gather for final preparation, the training hall feels different than it ever has before. Quieter, more focused, the usual noise of casual conversation replaced by something closer to serious anticipation. Commander Winters stands at the front of the room, addressing not just our small team, but representatives from all 6 civilizations gathered to witness the final briefing. What you face beyond Alliance territory remains largely unknown, she says, her voice carrying across the silent hall. What we do know is that 6 species working independently have failed to gather reliable information. This mission requires cooperation unlike anything previously attempted, genuine cooperation, built on trust rather than assumption. I glance around the room, seeing familiar faces from every civilization represented at the Academy, some still watching me with lingering skepticism, most now carrying something closer to genuine respect after everything that unfolded over the past several weeks. Vrax stands beside me, his posture steady, nothing like the arrogant champion who once mocked me in front of the entire Academy. "Whatever waits out there," he says quietly, only for me to hear, "I am glad to be facing it beside you rather than against you." I allow myself a small smile. So am I. The briefing continues, detailing everything currently known about the situation along the border, fragmented reports, incomplete scout data, and a growing sense across all 6 civilizations that whatever force is responsible for the unusual activity possesses capabilities none of them fully understand yet. Our mission, Commander Winters explains, is not confrontation, it is information. Observe, document, and return safely. Nothing more, nothing less. Simple words, though everyone in the room understands the actual complexity hidden beneath them. Nothing about approaching an unknown, potentially dangerous force will be simple, regardless of how carefully the mission parameters are defined. 2 days later, our team boards a small reconnaissance vessel, assigned specifically for this mission, departing the Academy station toward the outer boundary of Alliance territory. The journey takes nearly a full day, and I spend much of it reviewing every fragment of available data alongside Priya and Henry, searching for patterns the earlier scouting reports may have missed. Vrax spends most of the journey in quiet meditation, a practice I taught him during our recent training sessions, something Daniel Marsh emphasized heavily during my own years of instruction. "Awareness requires a calm mind," he always said. "A mind cluttered with fear or arrogance sees nothing clearly." As our vessel approaches the border region, the pilot, a quiet, capable officer named Grace Whitfield, alerts us that unusual energy signatures have appeared on long-range sensors, unlike anything cataloged in the Alliance's existing records. "We're picking up structures," she reports, her voice steady despite the unusual readings. "Large ones. Whatever built them possesses technology significantly different from anything we've previously encountered." The vessel slows as we approach a safe observation distance, and through the forward viewport, we see it for the first time. An enormous structure suspended in open space, its design unlike anything constructed by any of the 6 known civilizations, geometric patterns curving and folding in ways that seem to defy conventional engineering principles. Priya leans forward, studying the structure carefully. "That's not military," she says slowly. "Look at the patterns. That's something else entirely." I study the structure as well, something familiar tugging at the edge of my memory, though I cannot immediately place why the design feels oddly recognizable. Then Henry speaks, his voice carrying quiet alarm. "Movement detected. Multiple vessels emerging from the structure, heading in our direction." Grace immediately begins evasive preparations, though Commander Winters, monitoring the mission remotely from the Academy, issues clear instructions through our communication channel. "Maintain position. Do not engage. Observe only." We watch as several smaller vessels approach, their design equally unfamiliar, moving with a precision that suggests advanced coordination rather than aggressive intent. As they draw closer, our sensors begin picking up something unexpected, structured signals embedded within their approach pattern, something resembling communication rather than confrontation. "They're not attacking," Priya says slowly, studying the data. "This looks like an attempt to make contact." I glance at Vrax, whose expression mirrors my own cautious curiosity. Whatever waits beyond Alliance territory, it seems increasingly clear that this encounter may prove far more complex than a simple military threat. Whatever happens next, I think quietly to myself, remembering Daniel Marsh's careful lessons about awareness and patience. I am ready to face it with everything 9 years of quiet mornings on a distant outpost taught me to become. The unfamiliar vessels slow their approach, matching our own careful distance, neither advancing nor retreating. Grace monitors every subtle shift in their movement, her hands steady over the controls despite the unknown nature of what surrounds us. Commander Winters, still monitoring remotely, speaks through the communication channel with careful authority. "Team, prepare a formal contact protocol. If this is genuine communication rather than aggression, We may be witnessing something no previous Alliance mission has encountered. I glance toward Priya, whose focus remains locked on the incoming data streams. The structured signals continue, patterns repeating with increasing clarity, something that increasingly resembles an attempt at translation rather than a threat. It's adapting, she says slowly. Whatever is sending this, it's studying our own communication frequencies and adjusting in real time. Vrax leans forward, studying the massive structure still visible through the forward viewport. In all my training, he says quietly, nobody prepared me for something like this. None of us were prepared for this, I say honestly. That's exactly why the Council chose a team built on cooperation rather than individual strength alone. Henry monitors the smaller vessels carefully, noting their formation remains steady, non-aggressive, patient. Whatever is out there, he says, seems willing to wait for us to respond rather than force the encounter. Grace works quickly, establishing a careful response protocol designed by the Academy specifically for first contact scenarios, broadcasting a simple, universal signal indicating peaceful intent rather than aggression. The reaction comes almost immediately, the structured signals shifting subtly, and moments later, something resembling an actual message begins forming across our communication display, fragmented, imperfect, but unmistakably an attempt at genuine dialogue. We are the Aelith, the translated message reads slowly across the screen. We have observed your alliance for some time. We did not intend to cause alarm. The chamber falls silent, everyone processing the significance of what just appeared. Commander Winters, still monitoring remotely, speaks again, her voice carrying careful calm despite the historic nature of the moment unfolding. Respond carefully, she instructs. This may be the most important conversation any of us have ever been part of. I think about everything that led to this exact moment. The mockery I endured during my first months at the Academy, the match against Vrax that changed everything, the quiet mornings of training that shaped me long before any of this began. None of it, I realize, prepared me specifically for this moment, and yet somehow, everything about it did. Grace carefully drafts a response, guided by input from the entire team, expressing the Alliance's own peaceful intentions and genuine curiosity about the Aelith's presence along the border. The reply travels across the growing communication link, and within minutes, another message begins forming in response. We wish to understand your people before revealing ourselves fully, the message reads. Recent events within your training academy drew our attention. A small individual overcoming significant physical disadvantage through awareness rather than force. This aligns closely with principles we hold in high regard. I stare at the message, momentarily stunned. They watched the match, I say slowly, hardly believing the words even as I speak them. Vrax turns to look at me, something like quiet amazement crossing his expression. It seems, he says slowly, that your victory reached further than either of us ever imagined. The message continues, the Aelith explaining that their civilization values patience, observation, and understanding over aggressive expansion, qualities they rarely witness among the younger civilizations they occasionally observe from a careful distance. They explain that the unusual activity detected along the border was never intended as a threat, simply careful observation, an attempt to determine whether the Alliance's 6 civilizations were ready for formal contact. We believe you are ready, the final message reads. We would like to begin a formal exchange of understanding between our peoples. Commander Winters, upon receiving the full transcript of the exchange, immediately begins coordinating with Academy and Alliance leadership, recognizing the historic significance of what our small team has just accomplished. Within hours, official diplomatic channels begin forming, representatives from all 6 civilizations preparing for what promises to become the most significant development in Alliance history. As our vessel begins its return journey toward the Academy, Priya turns to me with an expression of genuine amazement. Do you understand what just happened? She asks. We just witnessed first contact with an entirely new civilization, and it happened because of something you started months ago in that arena. I think about Daniel Marsh, about the Ridge, about 9 years of quiet lessons that shaped a small, unremarkable boy into someone capable of standing at the center of something this significant. I never expected any of this, I admit honestly. I only ever wanted to prove that strength and awareness matter more than size alone. Henry smiles, shaking his head slowly. Well, he says, it seems the entire galaxy is starting to understand that lesson right alongside us. Vrax places a steady hand on my shoulder, an act that would have been unimaginable months earlier, when he still saw me as nothing more than an embarrassment to be mocked in front of an entire academy. Whatever comes next, he says quietly, I am proud to have learned this lesson from you, Ethan Cole. As our vessel continues its journey home, I allow myself a rare moment of quiet reflection, thinking back to that first day I arrived at the academy, small and unremarkable, among towering cadets who saw nothing worth respecting in my frame or my presence. I think about every whisper, every laugh, every assumption made about what a small body must mean about the strength contained within it. I think about Daniel Marsh's words, spoken so many years ago on a quiet, storm-battered outpost most people here will never fully understand. Strength fades, awareness does not. Let them underestimate you. That is not a weakness. That is a gift. Whatever the future holds, whatever challenges wait beyond the boundaries of known space, whatever growth still lies ahead for an alliance now expanding to include an entirely new civilization, I know one truth remains unshaken, carried with me from a distant outpost to the center of a moment that will shape history for generations to come. They once mocked Earth's frailest cadet, certain that size alone determined worth and strength alone determined victory. They had no idea what 9 years of quiet mornings had actually built. And now, standing at the edge of something far larger than a single arena match ever could have predicted, I finally understand exactly what Daniel Marsh meant all those years ago. This was never about proving I belonged among giants. It was about proving that giants were never the only ones capable of shaping the future.